It is time for some international football. The March international break is going to deliver some spectacular matches and dramatic moments across all continents in football as we prepare for next year's World Cup in the States, Canada and Mexico. It's going to be an amazing tournament, obviously 48 teams, so that makes these qualifiers even more important because some teams will see their first chance of making it at a World Cup either in a long time, or some teams even for the first time ever now have a chance to make it to the World Cup. And this international break, I've looked at it, it's a really important one. We're going to go through each continent, see what's happening and see how deciding this international break could be, because for some, actually the one we're starting with, Asia, in Asia, they've only got 4 games left, and those 2 of them will be played in this international break and 2 in June. So by June, we will know the 6 teams that qualify automatically from Asia to the World Cup. Obviously, a few teams will advance to the playoffs, and those will be decided later. But there's only 4 games left, and we will know the first Asian teams to make it to the World Cup. I mean, it's going to be heated because in Group A, Iran currently sit top with 16 points ahead of Uzbekistan and UAE and Qatar in the playoff spots, with Kyrgyzstan and North Korea quite far behind with very little chance of making it. I mean, the Iranians have been cruising so far, right? They haven't lost a game yet. They've got 1 draw, and that came away in Tashkent when they played Uzbekistan, and they've got UAE and Uzbekistan again in this international break. So those are 2 tough games, but they just need to get through them and they'll be fine. Iran should make it to the World Cup. I mean, Uzbekistan is key for them because they have never made it, and this is their moment. They've got a very good team. I think Abosbek Fayzulayev, that man is an absolute gem, and I think he's going to have another spectacular international break for Uzbekistan. At CSK Moscow right now, he is an absolute baller. I mean, Kusanov, obviously, we know, signed for Man City, and such a great young talent. This entire team, I think, is full of amazing players. Uzbekistan are really underrated, and especially when they play at home. They've got Kyrgyzstan in the first game. They should absolutely be beating them. I mean, they got kind of lucky away from home against them. It was 3-2. It was quite a close game, a late winner. But at home, they should have no problems. Iran is the tough one. If they manage to beat Iran and potentially even top this group, that is a real statement. The battle for the playoffs is there. I mean, Qatar hasn't been a very good qualifying campaign for them, and very tough now for them to make it automatically, but they need to at least secure a playoff spot and a chance to make it to the next one. Kyrgyzstan and North Korea are going to find it difficult. In Group B, South Korea are top with 14 points. They haven't lost a game yet. Iraq are in second, and they are a very good side. Ayman Hussein up front is the big man. He is the goal scorer. He is the danger man. Ali Jassim as well. They've got a great team. Iraq are really good. Very unlucky to go out in the Asian Cup the way they did. I think it was a little bit of a robbery. I think they've got a great side. Jordan as well in that group, who obviously beat Iraq in the Asian Cup and got all the way to the final of the Asian Cup. And I think for Jordan, it's that front 2, Musa Al-Tamari and Yazan Al-Naimat. Absolute ballers, and Jordan is really progressing. I think those are the 3 big teams in that group. Oman, Kuwait and Palestine, I don't think are to that level, and are going to find it difficult, but one of them will be in the playoffs, and in there anything can happen. But I am expecting South Korea and Iraq to qualify through the top 2. Jordan will be just behind in 3rd, but I do fancy them to maybe even make the World Cup through the playoffs. I think they definitely could do it. And then the final group in Asia is being absolutely stormed by the Japanese. They are absolutely on fire, 5 wins, and they are the only team in the group to have more than 2 wins. Interestingly, the team that does have 2 wins is China, but they're all the way at the bottom of the group. And other than that, every single other team has just 1 win. This group has been a draw fest. Just draws everywhere, and it's probably the most interesting group. Even though Japan are clearly at the top, the battle for that second spot between Australia, Indonesia, Saudi Arabia, Bahrain and China is there, and anybody can get it. I mean, Australia are the favourites, but the form hasn't been great. 4 draws as well. The last 3 have been draws, not in great form. So this international break is going to decide a lot, because now it's anybody's game, and these next 2 games will be absolutely crucial. These are make or break for all of these teams. Japan, they're fine, they're at the top, but everybody else. Indonesia, Marcelino Ferdinand, he is the guy for them. Oh my god. This man is such a ball. At Oxford United now, obviously, in England. he's had a fine start to the season, but it hasn't been the greatest. But when he plays for Indonesia, this man is such a baller, 20 years of age, such a talent, and I think Indonesia certainly will be hoping to make it to the World Cup. I mean, they play Australia in the first game of this international break. That is going to be an absolutely massive one for them. And China, advantage for them is they're the only team that doesn't have to play Japan. They've already played them twice. So could we see China potentially take advantage of that? They've got Saudi Arabia and Australia, and if they could get at least one win in there, that could really boost their chances of making it to the World Cup. AFC is going to be amazing. I can't wait to watch these games. I think there's going to be so much drama, and I think there's so much on the line with just 4 games. Another confederation where there is a lot on the line is CAF in Africa, because they have only got 6 games left. Okay, slightly more than Asia. Their qualifying campaign will end in September. Now, again, few teams will make it through the playoffs, but the chances in the playoffs are going to be very small for everybody. So I think these groups are truly really, really important. However, the key thing to know in CAF is that only the group winner advances, and there are 9 groups. So 9 teams will qualify automatically, directly. And in most of these groups, the favourite, who you would expect to be on top, is on top currently. But a few of them are not, and are going to have to lock in this international break. I'm talking about Group B, and Senegal are second, 2 points behind Sudan. And their first game of this international break is away in Sudan. Sudan actually can't play at home, so it's going to be in Libya. But Senegal have a crucial game against them, and if they do not win that, their chances of making to the World Cup are going to take a considerable hit. So they need to put it together. I mean, in that group, they've also got DR Congo, who are currently third, and they definitely need to fancy their chances of at least making it through the playoffs. They've got a very, very good side. In Group A, everything is as you'd expect, with Egypt at the top. The battle for second there is between Burkina Faso and Guinea-Bissau. I think Burkina Faso should be the ones getting it. They haven't looked in great form so far, but African football is always a lottery. We know this. But the major shocks are in Group C, where Rwanda currently sit top ahead of South Africa, Benin, Lesotho, leaving Nigeria in 5th place, yet to pick up a win. And that is not where the Super Eagles wanted to be, especially after getting to the final of the AFCON last year, and they need to start putting it together, or they will risk not being at the World Cup, even though they got a considerably good group, to be honest. South Africa are good, but the rest of the teams didn't even make it to the AFCON. So Nigeria really need to put it together in this international break, and that group is going to be fascinating. Group D, Cameroon sit top, and I think they got quite lucky with the draw, but one thing I was expecting more of so far is Angola. They've only got 1 win, and I think this is another crucial international break for them. The amount of storylines in this, I mean, there's just so many teams that need to lock in this international break if they want to make it to the next World Cup. But Cameroon, so far, they're doing well. They've done well. They're top of their group, and that is where they want to be. In Group E, the same can be said about Morocco, who are also they're clear in their group, right? Zambia, so far, who were meant to be the closest challenger, have not had a good campaign. 3 out of 4 losses, so that's not good. In Group F, it's Ivory Coast, the AFCON champions. You'd expect them to win this group and make it to the World Cup. They really, really should with the squad that they have. Group G is led by Algeria, but they're on the same amount of points as Mozambique, and they also need to be careful. They did not make the last 2 World Cups, so this is a big one for them. They need to be back at the World Cup in 2026. There will be no excuses, and they've got a very talented squad. A very, very talented squad. The AFCON didn't go so well for them. They've got Petkovic as manager, who obviously is the former Switzerland manager, and he did very well at Switzerland, so I'm expecting Algeria to be just fine. Group H is led by Tunisia, who, even though they suffered a bit of a decrease in form, especially at the AFCON, they're still 1-0 merchants. They still have that sort of quality in them, and I think that they also need to make sure that they get to this World Cup, because their group is not that difficult. They've got Namibia, who are a good side. They've got Equatorial Guinea as well, who are a decent side, but they are still, on paper, by far the best and need to make it through. And then the last group, Ghana are second, but level on points with Comoros, who are top of the group, and the Ghanaians not even qualifying for the AFCON this year. That's a real shame for them. I think that was an absolute disaster they had in qualifying. But in World Cup qualifying, it's been slightly better, and they need to make sure they win this group. They've got Chad and Madagascar in this international break, and they need to make sure they win. The World Cup cannot go again without Ghana, I don't think. Now, Conmebol is going to be interesting because 6 games left there, but now with the new increase in teams, 6 teams qualify automatically from South America, and 1 goes into the Intercontinental Playoff. Argentina currently absolutely smashing it, 8 wins, top of the leaderboard by a mile, and they will be making it to the World Cup for sure. And I think Uruguay, Ecuador and Colombia and Brazil probably have those spots on lock as well. I think for them to not make it now, it will take a really, really big Tottenham style bottle. But the battle is there for 6th. Paraguay, Bolivia, Venezuela are all in there, and Chile and Peru are quite far behind, and I think they're going to find it difficult now. But the battle between those 3 is going to be really, really close, personally, I think, because Venezuela are, I think tactically they've got a great manager in Batista. At the Copa America they did very well, right? They went out on penalties to Canada, which was it was a dramatic game, right? They lost on penalties. It's cool, but their form since then, they haven't picked up a win since then, and they've never made it to the World Cup, so they're going to be more hungry than ever. They've got Ecuador away in the first game, so that's tough, but then that game at home against Peru, they cannot mess that up. They need to make sure they beat Peru at home in Caracas to give themselves the best possible chance of making it, because Paraguay were in an absolute terrible run of form before the Copa America. They were getting absolutely destroyed, and at the Copa, it was an embarrassing showing from them. They lost all 3 games. But since then, they've hired Gustavo Alfaro, and he has been absolutely smashing it with them. They beat Brazil and Argentina, right? They got a draw away in Uruguay and Ecuador. Paraguay are truly ojo con Paraguay. That's what the South Americans say, and I think that they are currently the favourite to maintain that 6th spot and qualify for their first World Cup since 2010, and that will leave the battle for 7th between Venezuela and Bolivia, who are on paper the weakest side, but have delivered very well, also mainly using that home advantage. Playing in La Paz is just too difficult for the opposition. Now, the main one, according to most people, UEFA, Europe. There's not much going to happen here. I mean, the qualifiers are going to start, so there's still a long way to go. Unlike with these continents, where it's getting to the business end now, this is why it matters. UEFA, we're just getting started, and some teams still have to play the Nations League, so the groups aren't even set yet. So that's going to be really interesting. The Nations League games, I mean, Netherlands, Spain, Denmark, Portugal, right? Italy, Germany as well, and France, Croatia. So some very, very big games, and they will also decide who goes into what group. Now, from my country, Czech Republic, I think got quite lucky with the draw. Right, we got Faroe Islands, Gibraltar, Montenegro, and the loser of France, Croatia. I'm really hoping that's not France. And honestly, there is a chance that we could even go through in first place if we get Croatia. And if not, we should definitely be getting second, okay? Montenegro are not the greatest, right? I'm sorry, they're not the greatest. And Faroe Islands and Gibraltar are really, really not good. And we're playing both of them in this international break. So if we somehow find a way to fumble this, I'm actually going to cry. Like, this cannot happen, right? 48 teams, we need to make the World Cup. Oh my God. We really, really need, especially with this group now, right? We either win it, which would be amazing, and if we don't, we go to the playoffs and hopefully something happens there. But just make sure this first international break, it needs to be 6 points on the board. It just needs to be. Right, Concacaf is another one where nothing is going on, because obviously USA, Canada and Mexico all confirmed to be at the tournament because they're the host nations, and that means 3 more teams from CONCACAF will be there. So you're looking at the likes of Costa Rica, Honduras, El Salvador, you know, Panama, these teams. But that qualifying process is not going to be going on in this international break, as we have the CONCACAF Nations League going on instead, with some interesting matchups, right? Mainly Mexico coming up against Canada in what is going to be a very interesting game, and actually one that I think both sets of fans will want to win and will take very seriously. I think it's going to be I think it's going to be a tough one, and I think there's going to be a lot on the line, mainly bragging rights going, and also how prepared the teams are, because obviously not going through qualifying is not always a good like not having to do qualifying is not always a good thing, because you're less prepared. So I think this will be a real test for both teams, how ready they are into next year's World Cup, which will be huge for both of them, and not to mention the USA as well, the main host, coming up against Panama. So Concacaf has got something, but it's not the best. And Oceania, the last continent, New Zealand basically get a free ticket to the World Cup. If they somehow mess that up and we see Fiji or Tahiti at the World Cup, that would be maybe the biggest shock in the history of football. New Zealand basically got themselves a free ticket to the World Cup, so that's pretty much it. But mainly, I think Conmebol, AFC and CAF, Africa, Asia and South America, those are the big three for this international break, and those are the ones you should keep an eye on. So let me know in the comments, who do you think, which of these teams will qualify to the World Cup, and who needs to step it up in this international break? Which big sides are we going to see not at the World Cup? Right? Which shocks are we going to get from teams that are at the World Cup? It's going to be a really telling international break. After this international break, I think we can start to put together teams that will be at the World Cup, mainly from the 3 continents that I mentioned. So thank you very much guys for watching till the end. Subscribe for more, and I'll see you guys next time.